Welcome, Todd. Thanks for joining us.
How are you, sir?
Good, good. Thank you for having me.
Hey,
did you read all the backdrop behind enemy lines? You're there in Chicago.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Todd, did you read all those books or did you write all those books behind you?
I wrote these two that are up on the wall. And that was back when we had books. Now they're all Kindle and electronic.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I am a recovering journalist. I like to say I was a reporter. My first career was as a reporter, a newspaper guy. 23 years I did that full, career as a journalist. I was covering national security mostly, but also a lot of foreign correspondence all over the world, 30 countries, wars and insurrections and all that good stuff. And then in 2009, I was recruited to join the Texas Department of Public Safety's Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division, basically the big state police agency here in Texas, to join their intelligence division. And so I decided, man, that sounds really cool. They wanted me to do terrorism related. I'd been covering national security for years and years. So I guess somebody noticed that, and they were looking for people with unconventional backgrounds to kind of rebuild their intel division there. So I was there for almost 10 years doing counterterrorism in the Fusion Center, working with the FBI and all the federal agencies on terrorism issues. I ran teams of intelligence analysts doing collection ops and, feeding into the intelligence community and working closely with the FBI. We were all under one roof in what's called a fusion center. In case you've ever heard of a fusion center, that's been a big one here in Texas. And then I was recruited out of there by the Center for Immigration Studies in 2018. And since 2018, I've been covering the border and kind of sort of returning to my journalistic roots. Although I wouldn't call myself completely a journalist, I'm more of an editorialist, I guess now. So and I've been here for 6 years. The last, I guess all of it really, I'm a field guy. So, when I saw the border crisis kick up, I actually predicted the border crisis was going to happen, the catastrophe that happened down there, and spent probably most of the last 4 years on the ground in Mexico, Central America, South America with the immigrants. That's where I wrote this book, Overrun. Back here, it's all based on interviews with all of those primary sources, old school gumshoe type reporting, I guess. So here I am working for the Center for Immigration Studies. I'm a senior national security fellow. I do most of my work has to do with the nexus between national security, terrorism, crime, and immigration, especially illegal immigration. So that's why the national security part, that's what I've just been doing for so long, 20 years, really 25 years since 9/11. I was working for the Dallas Morning News when 9/11 happened, covering the FBI. And a lot of people don't know that the 9/11 hijackers, they took American Airlines aircraft. Well, I guess everybody kind of knows that, but they don't know that American Airlines has its headquarters in Dallas, Texas, which is where I lived, covering the FBI. And so the epicenter of that whole investigation was in Dallas. So I ended up getting sucked into the whole counterterrorism, everything that happened after that, and I never really got out of it again. Do you see that book up there, the first one, the green one? It says America's Covert Border War. That whole book is about the counterterrorism programs that we put in place on the border to prevent jihadists from infiltrating over the border and conducting attacks in the interior. So I've literally written the book on that. And not to mention that I've traveled all over the world covering the migration of Muslim immigrants from countries of national security interest all over the Middle East. I've been to Syria, Jordan, tracked them all the way through South America, up through Central America, and then into Texas. So this is something that I'm very, very familiar with, but there had never been an attack where that drew blood. There had been close calls. We've caught lots of guys that were trying to or wanted to, but they never actually succeeded. And so when this thing happened in Chicago, all my antennae went up and all the hairs on my neck stood up, and I knew exactly what the significance was of that event there in Chicago. I wrote about it immediately, of course, saying, this looks like the first case. And they've been warning about it. The intelligence community and Christopher Wray with the FBI, with increasing frequency, that this was going to happen in this border crisis, because of this border crisis, because of these policies. It's in the 2024 and 2025 Homeland Threat Assessment put out by the intelligence community publicly. They say it in these documents. That is incredibly rare that they would be that worried. And then bam, it happened in Chicago. So,
Todd, you know what? We lost our focus because the biggest threat is white supremacists in the United States of America.
Right. I mean, listen, Tren de Aragua, MS-13, guys that burn women up in the subway, all of that is legit and it's real. And even to some extent, white supremacy and all the rest. But this is something that they have been warning us about for about 3 years straight now, with increasing frequency. The intelligence community, and you have to just add this to the mix. You can't just blow this off. And I saw that it was getting blown off. Yeah. It wasn't getting coverage. And I was looking for coverage. I was looking for the Chicago Tribune. I got a subscription to the damn paper just to read about it. And there were 4 stories in it that were pro forma. They weren't covering it. I knew they weren't going to cover it.
It's incredible, right?
They covered the basics of it, but they didn't knock doors. They didn't try to find out about the shooter. They didn't dig in like we just saw in New Orleans. Heck, within 24 hours of the New Orleans thing, you had a lot of dead there, but within 24 hours, man, you had reporters inside the dude's house giving us a video tour inside the shooter's house. I mean, there was nothing.
He wasn't a terrorist, right? He was a U.S. born citizen, a military background. This is the difference, right? And then when they don't cover,
here's what I really think. I mean, I was in the business for a long time. I worked in newsrooms, big newsrooms, major newspapers, CBS, everything else. We were all liberal, politically liberal. I mean, not me, but there is a bias in these newsrooms, and especially, I suspect, in a place like Chicago, which is, who said it? One of you guys said it was a super majority of Democrats and all the rest. And I think that when they found out that the shooter in this thing was Muslim and a border crosser to boot, and the victim was Jewish, and most of them are all out there, rah-rahing the pro-Hamas demonstrators.
Right.
They didn't want to bring attention to it. And it was like less than a week before the national presidential election. None of those people wanted to hand a pretty gift-wrapped package with a bow to Donald Trump 5 days before the election. That's what I think.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
Yeah. Well, we had a governor that was suggesting he was going to defy the Trump orders. So I'm sure he didn't want to talk about a terrorist killing a Jewish guy. And
in Chicago, nobody wanted to touch that thing. They probably had to swallow their bile to write whatever they did. But in any case, the suspect is charged with terrorism. They charged him under pressure from the Jewish community, but they nevertheless charged him under the state of Illinois terrorism statute, which I don't think has ever been used. The FBI disappeared. Wow. They just ceded the battleground to the local police and the Cook County prosecutors, who are I would argue, are, very ill-equipped to deal with complex terrorism investigations.
totally.
I mean,
Yeah, they don't even prosecute people anymore because they're not allowed to. So.
Yeah, right.
they're not, yeah. But in any case, the guy hangs himself in Cook County Jail before he can stand trial. I was looking for the trial. I think the Jewish community there was looking for the trial
Yeah.
for information about this thing to come out through this other way. And when he hanged himself, I knew I had to go to Chicago.
Yeah.
So he was a Mauritanian illegal immigrant. He jumped the border in San Diego from Mexico in March of 2023. He makes his way to Chicago. They let him go. They always do. They ran his fingerprints and nothing popped, so they let him go. Normally, in normal times, as I write in the book, there would be like super intensive face-to-face interviews to figure out who these people are, but they quit doing that in Biden time. So they just let him loose. He comes to Chicago. He's there in Chicago for like a year and a half. Gaza breaks out. And I guess it pushed him over the edge, or we don't really know what happened. If somebody radicalized him, whatever, he somehow manages to get a semi-automatic handgun and ammo. And he plotted out very carefully, according to the prosecution, this attack on a Jewish synagogue, one of two, in the West Rogers Park area. So he comes up there ready. He's wearing the green workman's safety vest, which, if you don't know what that means, go take a look at all the video around the world of pro-Hamas demonstrators.
Oh, that's right.
That's what they're wearing.
They in the DNC. Me and Ben Burkham were in the DNC parade, and that's what they had on. Now that you said it, I didn't know what that represented. That.
Well, he brought his green workman's vest to his massacre.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Interesting.
that, and they found on his cell phone later, all this jihadist imagery.
Right.
So he comes across a Jewish guy, visibly Jewish. He's wearing the yarmulke and everything, and decides, well, I can't really wait to the synagogue. I'm going to just shoot this guy and kill him. So he shot him in the back. Jeez. And that's what started it. The guy goes down. And by the way, in my reporting in Chicago, I interviewed him. I'm the only one who's ever interviewed him. I had him for about 2 hours, him and his wife, in their house. Nobody, and I asked them, has anybody ever asked to interview? And they said, you're the first one.
Wow,
what?
That's crazy. You're right.
You have a surviving witness, a victim, and anyway, don't get me started. It pisses me off, really. I mean, so he gets up. He survives. The gunman sees him get up. He was running away, turns back around and pops 2 more rounds off at him, misses, and then they both go running. Next, there's 10 or 15 minute lull. There was a lot of shooting. The shooter, his name is Abdullahi, Sidi Mohammed Abdullahi, goes into neighbors' yards, fixes his gun jam, reloads, waits for the cops to show up.
And Todd, sorry, that's an important part, I think, is that when he was going after him and following up after him, what saved the guy was the gun did jam, right?
Gun jam.
Yeah.
That saved him.
Yeah. So keep going, sorry.
Yeah. And it tells you a lot right there. He didn't know how to clear the jam. He was not a good shot, obviously, thank God.
Yeah.
This guy somehow got a gun, and he didn't really know how to use it that well, I don't think. But in any case, he pops out. The cops are now there, taping off the scene, collecting evidence, trying to figure out what was going on here. And he pops out of nowhere, out of somebody's backyard, and opens fire on them. He opens fire on another neighbor. And for the next 4 minutes is just this raging gun battle in this upper middle class West Rogers Jewish neighborhood. It's not all Jewish. I interviewed 4 or 5 different neighbors on my trip to Chicago. It was white knuckled terror in this place. The Jewish residents there, the first place that their minds went was October 7 in Israel. They didn't know it was one gunman. They thought it was another crew, another posse of Hamas guys that were going to break into their house and slaughter them and burn them and rape them. That's where all of them were thinking that way.
Yeah.
Just to give you a sense, because that was what was in their minds. That's the forefront of a Jewish person's mind right now these days. So the terror inside, there's bullets flying all over the place, going through cars, ripping through houses, hitting fences and doors and windows. Cops are firing at him. He's retreating, coming out in different other angles, and they finally plug him 3 or 4 times. He goes down, but he's not done. Even after he's down, he's still rising up and trying to shoot at the cops. He fires at the paramedics who are loading the first Jewish victim into the ambulance 13, Chicago Fire Department. They come under fire, and he comes under fire a 3rd time. Bullets are flying all over. They're hitting the ambulance. The ambulance driver's like, let's get the F out of here. They're hauling off. As they haul off, they drive right by the guy, and he's shooting at him again. So they finally get him down and arrest him. He does not die. He ends up actually in triage right next to his first victim. The 2 of them are laying side by side there.
This sounds like a documentary, man. Keep going.
I mean, this was a full-fledged, horror show in the middle of Chicago.
Yeah.
I know that at the end they said, well, there was one guy wounded and he survived, and so they moved on. Plus the shooter, and okay, he hanged himself.
Yeah,
we don't really care about that. We won't even look into the hanging.
Yeah, right.
So I just felt like I had to come down there, write the hell out of this thing, put it on the map, make sure that people are always reminded that this happened, and to make sure my messaging here it's a 3-part series that is at CIS.org, Center for Immigration Studies.org. The message here is you have to pay attention and deconstruct every single terror attack, even if there wasn't a high body count, so that you can figure out the next guy who's going to do this, another border crosser.
Yeah.
Did Abdullahi have co-conspirators? Who knows? Nobody will say. The FBI told me just on Friday that we've closed our case on this because he's dead. And I'm like, well, what about co-conspirator? Did you rule out? No comment.
Or the origin, his origin story. Who radicalized him? Who trained him? Who did he get? Who was he associated with? Is there anybody else coming?
Do you know where he got the gun from, Todd?
Well, he did a search. The short answer is no. He did a search. They found searches of gun stores, and they found one up in Lyons. I went to that gun store.
Yep.
And interviewed the manager of it. Full interview. It's in the story. And she says, the cops were here. We worked together. We tried to figure out if it was possible that he had either purchased the weapon here or used our firing range. And we determined that he didn't. He never did. So we don't know where he got the weapon.
Interesting.
But knowing that kind of matters, because whoever got an illegal alien a weapon in Illinois without permits is a co-conspirator.
Yeah, are they looking into it, the police?
What's that?
Are the police looking in, tracking the number, or was it scratched off, or do you know that?
Chicago Police Department knows exactly where this thing came from, but they rejected all of my interview requests.
Unbelievable.
We will not cooperate with you, and so did the Fraternal Order of
John Quesadana or something like that, or
whoever it was. They were not going. And by the way, I came at them authentically saying, look, listen, the cops that shot this guy down absolutely saved a lot of lives.
Right.
It deserves to be lauded for the break. They were under fire, and you can see their body cam lately. They released the body cam because I filed FOIAs for the body cam. Instead of releasing it to me, they just put it out on X. But you can see that body.
That.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I saw it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Just a week ago, less than a week ago.
Yeah.
They did that because of my FOIA.
Broad daylight, right?
That's good.
I mean, it was
so one thing, Todd. I talked to my CPD buddies, and what I was explaining, how the union guy didn't want to help cooperate with you. And there's an organization called COPA in Chicago. Are you familiar with that? radical leftist scumbags that try to nail the police to the wall, put their names out there, investigate them. So that's what I was told was the reasoning behind that. They wanted to get it behind them so none of these guys get investigated by some BS from a radical Democrat in Copa.
Chicago cops are watching this who know about this case. I don't need to name names. Just saying.
Right. Todd, you mentioned obviously your background in analyzing terrorism and immigration, and you've been all over the world, including Mexico. Recently, I saw on the Sean Ryan show, I don't know if you're familiar, a CIA analyst, Sarah Adams. She had mentioned that there's like 1,000 terrorists in the country now, and that their cells, and that their goal is to
at least
do an October 7th attack. Do you have any insight into that kind of thing? Have you heard anything? Is this just scare tactics? I mean, she's former CIA, so I don't know how much we could trust her. But what are you hearing through this crisis about the terrorist threat in the United States now?
I don't have line of sight on that 1,000 number. I don't know where they're getting that.
Doesn't that seem low, Todd?
What's that?
Doesn't that seem low in reality?
I mean, are there more than 1,000 people living in the country who would love to do a terror attack? Yeah.
Yeah, easily. But I really believe there's more than 1,000 with terror ties. And
Tom Homan said basically a terror attack is imminent. Is the information you have that there's some sort of plan, or that we should be concerned?
Hell yeah, we should be concerned.
I knew you were going to say it.
Because listen, here's the thing. This last 4 years of what happened this last 4 years has never happened, like, as far as I know, anywhere in the world, in any country that exists presently, or any country that's existed through history down to ancient times.
Except the Trojan horse.
Yeah. Right.
Nobody does this.
Right.
Nobody ever has done this except
crazy.
the United States. We're going to let everybody in. And we don't care if they're from Muslim majority countries. So what happened is, let me give you an example. Last year, there was a prosecution in Ohio of an Iraqi asylum seeker. He was a tourist visa overstay. And he had a long history of fighting for Al-Qaeda over there, blowing up our soldiers. We let him in anyway on a tourist visa. So that's about plotting to bring in 4 of his old buddies from Iraq over the southern border to assassinate George W. Bush. Why wouldn't he have them come in on a tourist visa too? Because it was even easier and safer and less detectable for them to come over the southern border. Right. He knew that's the way to get terrorists into the country during this period. And so just based on that case alone,
we got more than 1,000.
You have to assume that if you're a terrorist organization anywhere in the world, of course you're going to send your people in right now during this period of time. Right. The Americans are being idiots. We got to get them in there now before they smarten up.
Yeah, Todd, I think, I like your opinion on this. I believe there's also like special force type folks from our enemy countries that are in here operating undercover and blending in. Do you think that's a true statement or not?
Absolutely.
I think that there are military age guys that have come in. I mean, I've met tons. I can't even tell. I mean, I've met Mauritanians all along the migrant trails. I've met Chinese. I've met people from every special interest country that there is. Uzbekistanis and Kazakhs and you name it, Lebanese. There's nobody I haven't met coming in, and they're usually young men.
Well, that's what we experience here. And some of the busloads I confronted, it's like 98% men, military age men.
Venezuelan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean they're all...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But the ones with the face tattoos and doing this. A
lot of Trendle Aragua. Yeah. I'd like to get your opinion. I mean, You mentioned this is unprecedented. You mentioned no country in history, even going back to ancient times, ever done this. What is this merely political in order to grow the welfare state and have a constituency for the Democrats? Is this growing the government thing, bipartisan type situation in order to, create more chaos, dependency? What do you think this is all about?
Question. I'm asked that question all the time. And I have a little bit of a different spin on it. I hear they're bringing in Democratic voters, but that's not really my assessment as much, although it definitely will affect in a population way in the next census, the
Right.
delineation of new congressional districts.
Right.
So they don't differentiate between. So it will eventually probably benefit Democrats. But I think that this is more ideological and about money and ideology. And what I mean by that is, there was this backlash against the Donald Trump 1.0 and his immigration agenda. Powerful backlash. If you wanted to oppose Trump, the best way to do it is through the immigration and the border policies. So you had these ideologues that were anti-borders. It's the best way to say is they're just open borders people that believe that immigration enforcement, in their heart of hearts, there's this whole religion out there. I'm not making this up. It's complex. It's a religion where they believe that borders are immoral and evil. Immigration detention is like Nazi concentration camps. ICE agents are like Nazis, jackbooted brown shirt thugs.
Right.
They have a whole thing about this, and they believe that any sort of immigration enforcement is just immoral, or like Jim Crow laws.
Right.
They're abolitionists. They're modern day abolitionists on the immigration issue. They've been around for 20 years, but the Democrats have kept them chained to the basement.
Yeah, you're right, because Obama even said, we have to control immigration,
Clinton, I mean, all the regular Democrats have always been pretty tough on the border, but not this time.
No.
Because the Biden people needed that progressive left to rise and win in 2020. And then it became about money, because those are the people that they let into the White House, the State Department, DHS, and they engineered this thing.
Yes.
They came from the NGOs. They came from the NGOs. Right. And their policies enriched the NGOs. We paid hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars to those NGOs on the south of the border and in the interior. All of those NGOs that are working the situation there in Chicago are the people that have gotten rich on this. It's about money, contracts, federal grants.
And we know.
Hundreds of billions of dollars.
Todd, did you see any of the stories that Paul, I go out and kick him up and Paul writes, did you see the ones about Catholic Charity? Did I send those to you yet?
I know all about Catholic Charity.
Oh my God, they're awful. Yeah. I'm a Catholic.
Well,
not a good one though.
We found, Catholic. To your point, Todd, we've written stories. Terry's done a bunch of FOIAs for the city of Chicago. We found FEMA, Catholic Charities, State of Illinois, City of Chicago,
Department of Transportation,
congressional Democrats, all colluded. Money, just spend. It's all government money. Even Catholic Charities, we uncovered in our reporting that the federal government's subsidized Catholic Charities to the tune of like $1 billion a year. So it's all taxpayer-funded money. Even the NGOs are getting our money.
So I had a whistleblower reach out to me. He was in 2021. He came in. He's an older man, and he said, "I see his pay stubs, Todd. $360,000. So the way it works inside the ship, there was 27 big ones in Chicago. So they got a PMO. This guy made 360,000. Then under that, he had 2 PMs, and he had they made 275,000 a year, and then under that there was two operational leads. One was for facilities management, the other one's for resources, making 200,000 plus the security guards who never showed up, by the way. In his facility, he was supposed to have two per shift, and he took an Excel spreadsheet to chart how they were not showing up. Got the email he sent to the city of Chicago, and they basically told him that's not our charter, our mission, don't worry about it. And then they threw out half the food. And then the water bottles, most of them aren't drunk. People have to clean them up. And then I had a friend just reach out to me this week. I haven't saw in 35 years, and he came across on Facebook. And so I haven't talked to him in 35 years. He was a sergeant early on at 4 different facilities. He's telling me how they had all these like computers, brand new bicycles, baby strollers. 2 guys got their own private room, two and two. They got 2 rooms, 52-inch screen TVs and nice furniture to help keep the security in check with the rest of the Venezuelans. And then in the basement, there was a ID. They had an ID hardware set up to print out the Chicago IDs for all these illegals. And they had nice cars. He's going to call me later this week and give me more.
Lot, yeah.
Yeah. So
the point is that like everything else, ultimately everything falls back to the cash flow.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in the next few years, we are going to start to see indictments and prosecutions for corruption across America.
Mm-hmm.
This is because I strongly suspect that there was a lot of no bid contracts steered to friends, family. People got rich over 4 years. Just the salaries you guys are telling me about, tally that up over 4 years, and they're millionaires.
Yeah, you know what? We'll talk offline. So I got some stuff because you're a real reporter, unlike me. So the Holiday and 73rd and Cicero was open up to put the illegal immigrants there before the DNC because they had such an overflow, right? So they put that in place in June or something like that, but they started remodeling ahead of time. My brother, who sold his security guard company, minority woman company, his wife and him, they had the security guard services before Garda-World. Are you familiar with Garda-World security?
No.
Oh my God, you got to investigate them. So Garda-World is out of Ontario, Canada. It's like the Blackwater of Canada internationally. So they do security at Davos and World Economic.
I just saw a piece about that at NBC5 Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there one of those? I don't know.
Okay.
Somebody just did a story about them.
Yeah, so that's them. So Mayor Brandon Johnson says he reminds us that he's a black man all the time, right? And then he wants to help brown and black people. And then he gives this contract at all the centers to these guys. And more so my brother, they did a good job there, right? And so they met with the 2 owners, and I'll send you their information. They're Indian guys from Houston, Texas. And they own a number of Holiday Inns, and they're the ones that my brother met with them. Their contract was ending at about the right time when they're starting to, ramp this up to the illegals. And they said, I'm sorry, man. He goes, the government made us an offer we couldn't refuse. And they replaced him with Garda-World, not because of performance. So they're obviously overpaying just like everything else, right, to get their people in there. And I'd like to know, why is Brandon Johnson, there's 1 million minority and African-American security guards, right, companies in Chicago. Why is he giving it to a company that's not even American? It's from Ontario, Canada. They have a division they're using, for North American, which is really, really bullshit. So
Could be steering going on.
Yeah.
So all of this, remember when they were handing out COVID checks to everybody, all these years since, all these fraud cases are emerging and they're prosecuting and they're putting people in. That's what's going to happen
I
here.
hope so.
Yeah,
It's going to happen. People are going to prison over this thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this happened. It was always about the money. They created a crisis to profit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I went to the Standard Club. There was like 2,000 Venezuela, tons of crime, 706 police reports in 12 months, Todd. That's 2 per day. And then the other one I went to is in Chicago. And so the same guy from Michigan who spent 7 years in federal prison for some financial frauds bought both of these facilities. Old, the Standard Club was 150 years old. It was after COVID, right? He bought them in both of them. And all of a sudden he's full occupancy. Right?
Almost
full
like he had,
and then they get money to remodel and stuff. There's got to be something going on, and he knew. right? He bought it at a huge discount and needed remodeling after COVID. And so that's another example of the corruption that we have to look into.
On this immigration thing, I mean, we agree that it's all about money. We did some reporting, and I looked into this stuff, and I found a report. I don't know if you're familiar with the 2000 UN report on replacement migration.
I've seen that.
Okay, yeah, and Elon Musk has brought this up too, right? I'm wondering what you think about this idea, because it seems like all the West is committing suicide with this immigration crisis, right? Not just the United States, but I'm wondering what your take on that is, in the sense that we have somewhat of a birth rate replacement crisis in the West. We're not replacing our populations. Do you think this is like sort of like a Henry Kissinger-esque, bureaucratic plan as well, that has just gotten out of control? And of course the politicians and bureaucrats have taken advantage of it with the money situation. But that report is from 2000. So, and it's, the birth rate replacement rate has only gotten worse. So, do you have any insight into that, or any opinion on that, or you think it could get worse? Or
I'm somewhat familiar with what you're talking about. I mean, I'm not really. I mean, my feeling is that the United States is unique in a lot of ways. I mean, we're not Sweden, Norway, or the UK in the sense that we have always. It's like in our DNA, our tradition to bring in highly diverse, kinds of people and religions. We've always done that. That's like our thing, that's our thing. So it doesn't really, it doesn't concern me so much that we're bringing more people from Africa and more people it's that do it legally with the consent of the people.
right.
Do it where it makes sense and have a public debate about it. Maintain that sovereign. It's our right to decide who gets to join our club. That's just simply the way it is. It's our right to decide. Where in this case we ceded that right over to the whole world and said, if you want to come, you can come.
Right.
You decide whether you want to come. That's not how anybody works it. There's no country that works that.
It's like they were engineering a new population almost, right?
Well, if that's what they did, they were planning, they totally did it.
Last question for you, Todd. Would like your opinion as to the dangers of this new law Pritzker's putting in place, that after 3 months, these illegals can change their name. Could you, do you have any?
That. Yeah. I have been reading about that with great interest. The part of it that bothers me the most is that they're selling this as, well, there's this provision in there that requires the immigrants to report their new name to the police, to authorities, to ICE. But there's no enforcement mechanism for it. It just says, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
But not if you don't do it, you go to jail.
Right. Right.
$10,000 fine or something like that. So it's a wink, wink to, we're taking ourselves out of your ICE system.
Right.
Yeah.
That's I don't know how else to read that.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Well, this has been great. I'd love to follow up with on some of this other stuff I share with you, since you're a real reporter, and some of the FOIAs and all the I got so much we haven't really. I've been sick since I talked to you. We're just getting out of this. I got so much stuff that you can really leverage, of just crazy, crazy stuff that's going on here. Plus, with the whistleblowers, that you could turn into something probably good.
I'm a big fan of FOIAs. And litigating FOIAs too.
Good. Cool.
Well, Todd, really appreciate your time. Thanks for answering all our questions. Appreciate your work as well.
Hey, are those challenge coins behind you on your?
They are.
Are they?
Yep.
Oh man, I just happen to have this one here. I got this from my Chicago Proud Boy buddies. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, I have a whole other rack over here of those. But yeah, I mean, if you're in law enforcement for 10 years like I was, eventually you get, everybody's handing those. Yeah. That's all from my law enforcement days. So
Well, that's nice.
That's cool.
Well, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Todd.
thank you guys. Bring me back anytime.
Awesome.
Thank you. Definitely.
Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Todd. Bye-bye.
And you can go see my stories from Chicago at cis.org. All 3 of them are up.
Yep. And on Twitter too, right?
And we got
What's your Twitter handle?
At toddbensman.com, you can find all my work there too.
We got
Twitter
it on the
handle
screen
is
there.
Bensman Todd at Bensman Todd.
At Bensman Todd is his Twitter, so you could go there too and follow him as well.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Guys,
Bye.
Take care, Todd.
up the good work.
Thanks.
Thanks. That was good.
Well, that was interesting. It's
Awesome.
great to finally have somebody.
He had an interesting background.
Yeah, he does. We'll definitely get him back and talk about that book.